His family's laughter followed me everywhere. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking that maybe they were just joking, or that I was overreacting. But every dinner, every holiday, every casual meeting seemed to come with a hidden jab. I remember one evening, Ryan's mom commenting on my hands, saying, "You know, girls with your skin tone rarely get noticed." I smiled politely, but inside, it stung. I wondered if Ryan even noticed how cruel they could be. I spent months trying to please them. I dressed differently, changed the way I spoke, tried to join their conversations with fake enthusiasm. Nothing worked. They didn't see me as someone worthy of respect or love, they saw me as a target for their amusement. Even Ryan would sometimes make comments under his breath, small things meant to blend into the background, but I heard them. It was confusing and heartbreaking to realize that the person I trusted the most wasn't defending me. Every insult, every smirk, made me feel smaller, but it also planted a seed. I started thinking about what I could do to prove them wrong, not in front of them, but in a way they could never ignore. I began spending my nights researching, learning about beauty brands, marketing, and social media trends. I read stories of women who started with nothing and built empires, and I told myself, if they won't see my worth, I'll create a world where everyone else does. I also started talking to other women who had faced similar ridicule. Their stories were raw and painful, but they also gave me strength. I realized I wasn't alone, and that my experiences could be the driving force behind something bigger. I wanted to create something that celebrated women like me, strong, ambitious, and beautiful in every shade. Despite the shame and humiliation, I refused to let it define me. I stopped seeking approval from Ryan's family and started looking for opportunities to empower myself. I made a plan to launch my own line of beauty products, something that would highlight the richness of dark skin and challenge the narrow definitions of beauty I had been forced to endure. The journey wasn't easy. I had moments of doubt, times when I wondered if I could really pull it off. But every small success fueled my determination. I was learning to turn humiliation into motivation and betrayal into ambition. Slowly, I stopped feeling small. Instead, I felt powerful in ways I had never imagined. Looking back, I realized that the very people who tried to make me feel inferior unknowingly gave me the fire I needed. Their cruelty didn't break me, it shaped me. And while they laughed at me then, I knew deep down that one day, I would rise in a way they could never expect, and nothing would ever feel sweeter than that moment. I kept trying to fit in, convincing myself that if I showed enough effort, they might accept me. I attended every family dinner, every holiday gathering, even casual weekend meetups. I laughed at their jokes, tried to join conversations, and made sure to compliment them when it felt genuine. But it never mattered. Every kind word I offered seemed to bounce off like water on stone. I slowly realized that their compliments were never real, they were traps, tests to see how much I would tolerate, how much I would bend. Ryan's siblings were the hardest. His brother Luke barely spoke to me, giving curt nods or fake smiles, and his sister Emma was the worst. Her eyes held judgment, and her words carried subtle cuts that felt sharper each time. She would ask me questions about my career goals, my family, and my ambitions, but always in a way that made me feel small. Every response I gave seemed to fuel her amusement rather than curiosity. It was exhausting, constantly calculating what to say so I wouldn't become the subject of another cruel joke. Ryan noticed all of it, of course. But he never stood up for me. Sometimes he laughed along with them, sometimes he stayed quiet, and sometimes he made small comments that seemed like defense but only highlighted my insecurities further. I felt betrayed, realizing that the person I trusted most wasn't protecting me. Instead of being my shield, he had become part of the reason I felt exposed, judged, and humiliated. The breaking point came during one family gathering. We were all sitting in the living room, the air heavy with forced cheerfulness, when Emma made her move. She leaned back in her chair, smirked, and said in front of everyone, "No one will ever hire someone with skin like yours for modeling or beauty campaigns." The room went silent for a moment, as if everyone was waiting to see my reaction. Ryan shrugged, a casual gesture that made me feel invisible and unsupported. His inaction cut deeper than the words themselves. I remember standing there, my heart pounding, trying to keep my composure. I wanted to cry, to scream, to run out of that house and never look back. But I stayed, smiling politely, all while feeling a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief. It was the first time I truly understood that their judgment wasn't about me, it was about their own ignorance and arrogance. That night, I reflected on everything that had happened. I realized that I had two choices: continue trying to earn approval from people who would never respect me, or focus on building my own path where I controlled my worth. I decided then that I would no longer let their cruelty define me. Their betrayal lit a fire inside me, a determination to rise above their mockery and prove my value on my own terms, far beyond their narrow expectations. From that moment, I started to see every insult, every sneer, and every laugh not as a setback, but as fuel to drive me toward something bigger, something they could never imagine. That night, I lay in bed, tears streaming down my face, feeling smaller than I had ever felt before. The humiliation from that evening didn't fade, it settled in my chest, heavy and suffocating. I kept replaying Emma's words and Ryan's careless shrug, wondering how someone I loved could be so blind to the pain caused by his family. The betrayal cut deep. It wasn't just about a harsh comment, it was the realization that they never truly saw me as a person with dreams, talents, and worth. To them, I was just someone to judge, a convenient target for mockery, a toy they could twist and belittle whenever it amused them. I had tried so hard to fit in, to make them like me, to prove that I belonged. I had smiled, laughed, and made every effort to bridge the gap between us. But their behavior made it clear that no matter what I did, I would never be enough. That understanding hit me like a punch, and for a moment, I felt powerless and defeated. I cried until I could cry no more, exhausted from carrying the weight of their judgment on my own. Then, something shifted inside me. Amid the pain and despair, a small voice whispered, "If they won't see your value, show them." It started as a flicker of determination but quickly grew into a blazing fire. I realized that the power they held over me, through insults, mockery, and judgment, was an illusion. I didn't need their approval. Their laughter, their sneers, their attempts to make me feel small, they were nothing compared to what I could achieve with focus, passion, and self-belief. I promised myself that I wouldn't just survive their cruelty. I wouldn't just endure their words and pretend they didn't hurt. I would use every insult, every mocking glance, and every moment of betrayal as fuel to propel myself forward. I would take the very thing they tried to use against me, their underestimation, and turn it into a reason to rise higher than they could ever imagine. I envisioned a future where they would watch in silence, unable to deny my accomplishments. Where the girl they mocked would stand tall, successful, and respected. Where every word they said to hurt me would be overshadowed by the reality of my achievements. That vision became my anchor, a source of strength I clung to during the hardest moments. By the time I finally drifted into sleep, my tears had dried, replaced by a determination I had never felt before. The humiliation no longer controlled me, instead, it had awakened something stronger. I understood that revenge wouldn't be about hurting them, it would be about proving my worth in ways they could never ignore. That night, I vowed to myself, I would rise, and I would leave them in awe. From that moment, nothing could stop me. Every step I took after was driven by that promise, a silent determination that turned betrayal into the fuel for my unstoppable journey. I decided it was time to stop waiting for approval from people who would never respect me. I quit my job, leaving behind a steady paycheck, and poured every dollar I had into something I truly believed in, creating skincare and beauty products for dark-skinned women. I wanted to build a brand that celebrated people like me, something that would make others feel proud of the skin they were in, instead of ashamed. At first, my friends didn't understand. They told me I was taking a huge risk, that it was impossible to start a beauty brand from scratch with no backing, no experience, and almost no connections. Some even laughed outright, warning me that I'd fail. But their doubt didn't bother me the way Ryan's family's insults did, their words were fuel, not chains. Every time I thought of Emma saying no one would hire someone like me, I felt a spark of determination ignite inside me. Their cruelty became my motivation, a constant reminder that I had to succeed, not just for myself, but to prove that they were wrong. I spent long nights researching ingredients, formulas, and what products dark-skinned women truly needed. I read everything I could find about branding, marketing, and social media promotion. I experimented in my tiny apartment kitchen, testing creams and serums on friends and strangers willing to try. Each failure was a lesson, and each small success felt like a step closer to the life I knew I could create. Money was tight. I had to make sacrifices, cutting out little luxuries and living frugally. Every dollar I spent was carefully planned, every decision calculated to make my dream a reality. There were days when I questioned whether it was worth it, when exhaustion and doubt crept in. But then I'd remember the smirk on Emma's face, the way Ryan never defended me, and I would push harder. I told myself that I didn't just want success, I wanted undeniable success, the kind that would leave them speechless. Slowly, my brand started to take shape. I designed packaging that was bold and elegant, something that celebrated diversity instead of hiding it. I reached out to influencers who could represent my vision and started sharing my story on social media. Every post, every product, every interaction was a way to turn what once humiliated me into a message of empowerment. Even though I worked alone most of the time, I never felt weak. I had purpose, a mission that no mockery or ridicule could shake. I realized that the first step toward revenge wasn't confrontation, it was building something so strong and visible that their words and laughter could never touch me again. By the end of the first year, I could see progress. Small as it was proof that my hard work was paying off. I had transformed my pain into action, my humiliation into fuel, and my dreams into something tangible. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning, the first step in a journey that would one day leave everyone who doubted me in awe. Starting Myaglow was nothing like I imagined. Every step forward felt like climbing a mountain. Banks turned me down when I asked for loans, saying I didn't have enough experience or collateral. Suppliers doubted me, questioning whether anyone would buy products for dark-skinned women. Even some customers were skeptical at first, unsure if my brand could deliver what it promised. It was discouraging, but I refused to give up. Every no I heard, every doubt thrown my way, I treated as a lesson. I learned to negotiate better, to find alternative suppliers, and to create products that truly made a difference. I spent hours online, researching marketing strategies, studying successful beauty brands, and seeing what worked and what didn't. I taught myself about social media advertising, content creation, and how to connect with an audience. Slowly, Myaglow began to take shape. I launched a few small products, and the response was better than I expected. Customers loved the focus on quality, diversity, and celebrating dark skin. Each positive review, each repeat purchase, was proof that I was on the right path. Meanwhile, Ryan and his family had no idea what I was building. They continued mocking me, posting subtle insults on social media, making comments at parties, and spreading gossip about how I would never succeed. At first, it hurt to know they were still trying to belittle me. But over time, I realized that their words no longer controlled me. Instead, I used their ignorance as motivation. Every joke they made, every snide remark, reminded me why I needed to push harder, to work smarter, and to show them exactly what I was capable of. I focused on small wins, getting the packaging right, improving the formulas, and slowly building a loyal customer base. I reached out to influencers and bloggers who were genuinely interested in promoting inclusivity, and my message began to spread. The more effort I put into the brand, the clearer it became, success wasn't going to be handed to me. I had to earn it, step by step, no shortcuts, no excuses. Even when things went wrong, when a shipment was delayed or a product didn't sell as expected, I learned to adapt. I treated every setback as a challenge, a puzzle to solve, instead of a reason to quit. Slowly, Myaglow started to grow, gaining recognition online and in small retail stores. I could see the difference I was making, not just in sales, but in how women felt about themselves when using my products. While Ryan and his family laughed at parties and on social media, I was quietly building an empire. Every late night, every failure, every lesson learned added up. And deep down, I knew that one day, my success would be impossible for them to ignore. They had underestimated me, and that would be their biggest mistake. My brand wasn't just a business, it was my answer, my triumph, and the silent revenge I had promised myself. 2 years after I started, everything began to change. My glow went viral on social media almost overnight. Influencers started posting about our products, praising the quality and the way they celebrated dark-skinned women. Suddenly, women from all over the country were reaching out, thanking me for creating something that finally represented them. The small brand I had built with my own hands was no longer just a dream, it was real, and it was being noticed everywhere. Beauty magazines wanted interviews, TV shows called to feature our products, and international brands reached out for collaborations. It was surreal to see my name in print, to hear people talk about Maya Glow with respect and admiration. The woman who had once been mocked for her skin, laughed at for her dreams, was now becoming a recognized face in the beauty world. Every insult, every sneer from Ryan's family felt like a distant memory, replaced by pride and validation. Then came the awkward part. Emma, Ryan's sister, tried to contact me. She sent messages on social media, praising my work, complimenting my success, and pretending to be supportive. I could sense the insincerity immediately. Her words were smooth, but her tone carried the weight of all the times she had humiliated me. It would have been easy to respond, to explain myself or even show a small flicker of kindness. But I remembered my promise, no forgiveness until the world recognized my value, until my success spoke louder than anything they had ever said. I refused to reply. Every message she sent, every attempt to insert herself into my life, only reminded me of how far I had come. Their laughter, their ridicule, and their doubt were powerless against the empire I was quietly building. I realized that true victory wasn't in confrontation, it was in letting my achievements speak for me, letting the world see what they had tried to dismiss. As my glow grew, I began traveling for interviews, speaking at events, and meeting other entrepreneurs who had faced similar struggles. Women would approach me at events, tears in their eyes, thanking me for creating a brand that celebrated them. I felt a deep sense of purpose knowing that my work was touching lives and inspiring confidence. The pain of the past was still there, but it had transformed into something meaningful, a motivation to keep pushing, to keep growing, and to keep proving that I belonged exactly where I was. Looking back, I understood that this first taste of success was more than recognition. It was proof that my hard work, my resilience, and my determination could overcome ridicule and betrayal. The people who had mocked me, who had tried to make me feel small, were irrelevant in the face of what I had accomplished. My glow was no longer just a business, it was a statement, a symbol of strength, and a reminder that the fire they had sparked inside me had turned into a blaze they could never extinguish. The night of the big launch, the room was buzzing with excitement. Media cameras flashed, influencers mingled, and my glow products were displayed elegantly across the venue. I was nervous but also proud. This was the moment I had worked so hard for, the result of years of effort, sacrifice, and determination. I stepped up as the keynote speaker, ready to share the story of Maya Glow and the mission behind it. Then I noticed them. Ryan and his family had arrived. They had come unannounced, likely expecting to see someone small and insignificant, someone who would falter under pressure. Instead, they were met with a room full of attention, admiration, and respect. Their eyes widened as they realized I wasn't just speaking, I was leading, commanding the stage, and representing a global campaign. I smiled politely at them, holding my head high. Every insult Emma had thrown, every sneer, every whispered mockery, came rushing back. I remembered the nights I had cried alone, the times I had felt worthless, the moments I had questioned whether I could even succeed. But those memories no longer weighed me down, they fueled the calm strength I carried in that room. Ryan's family looked uneasy. Their whispers and judgmental stares were meaningless now. I had become exactly what they said I could never be. My success wasn't loud or aggressive, it was undeniable. The applause from the crowd, the media attention, and the respect from industry professionals spoke far louder than any words of mockery they could ever offer. I realized something crucial in that moment. Revenge isn't about seeking to hurt the people who doubted you. It isn't about confrontation or humiliation. True revenge is showing them, without a single word, that their judgment and cruelty cannot touch your value. Success is the kind of revenge that leaves no room for argument, no room for doubt, it simply exists, powerful and undeniable. I spoke confidently to the audience, sharing the vision behind Maya Glow, the importance of inclusivity, and how dark-skinned women finally had products made for them. Meanwhile, Ryan and his family shifted uncomfortably in their seats, watching as I commanded the room. The contrast between who I had been when they mocked me and who I had become was impossible for them to ignore. By the end of the night, Maya Glow had gained even more attention, contracts were signed, and new opportunities were opening every door. I didn't need to say anything to Ryan or his family. My presence, my success, and the respect I earned were the answer. That evening, I left the stage with pride. The laughter and cruelty that once tried to define me no longer had power. I understood fully that the best revenge is growth, achievement, and undeniable success, the kind that forces those who doubted you to watch silently as you rise far beyond their expectations. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. Not just from their judgment, but from the weight of needing approval. And in that freedom, I realized the true meaning of triumph. Maya Glow didn't stop at the launch party. Within months, the brand expanded internationally, reaching markets in Europe, Asia, and beyond. Stores contacted us to carry the products, and collaborations with major beauty influencers and brands became frequent. What had started as a small, personal mission had grown into a global movement, celebrating dark-skinned women everywhere. Every step forward reminded me of how far I had come from those nights of doubt and humiliation. Meanwhile, Ryan's family began to realize that their mockery and judgment no longer held any power over me. They reached out, trying to salvage what they could of our relationship. Messages, calls, even personal visits came, filled with fake apologies and attempts to reconnect. But by that point, I had moved on. My closure didn't depend on their recognition or approval. Their words, their laughter, and their cruelty had been replaced by the tangible evidence of my achievements, the empire I had built with my own hands. Ryan even reached out, expressing regret and claiming he didn't realize how much he had hurt me. He tried to explain, to seek forgiveness, but I remained silent. I didn't need his words to feel validated. The empire I had created, the confidence I had gained, and the respect I had earned in the industry spoke far louder than any apology he could offer. Silence became my answer, a quiet strength that emphasized how completely I had outgrown their influence. Every day, Maya Glow continued to grow. I hired teams, trained staff, and empowered young women to pursue their ambitions. The brand became a symbol of resilience and empowerment, proof that success isn't just about talent or luck, it's about determination, hard work, and refusing to let others define your worth. Every expansion, every new collaboration, every feature in international media reinforced that the journey I had started in isolation had reached heights even I had once thought impossible. Looking back, I realized that the closure I had sought all those years ago never needed to come from Ryan or his family. I didn't need apologies or recognition from the people who doubted me. My success, my confidence, and my self-respect were enough. They were the proof that I had risen above every insult, every betrayal, and every moment of humiliation. I had created a life and a legacy that no one could diminish. At the end of the day, I understood that triumph isn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It's about building a life so full of achievement, pride, and independence that no one's past cruelty can touch it. Maya Glow was more than a beauty brand, it was my answer, my statement, and my proof that I didn't just survive, I thrived. And in thriving, I found the freedom and fulfillment I had always deserved. Looking back on everything, I could see clearly how every insult, every betrayal, and every moment I felt small had shaped me. Those experiences, painful as they were, became fuel for my ambition. Every mocking laugh, every judgmental comment, every whispered doubt pushed me to work harder, learn more, and aim higher. I realized that the negativity from Ryan's family and others who doubted me wasn't a barrier, it was a catalyst. It forced me to prove, first to myself and then to the world, that I was capable of greatness. I thought often about the times I had cried alone, wondering if I would ever be enough. At the time, those moments felt crushing. But in retrospect, they were lessons in resilience. I learned patience, strategy, and the power of silent determination. Instead of responding to cruelty with anger, I focused on building something lasting, something real. Every setback became a chance to improve. Every moment of humiliation became a reminder of why I needed to succeed. As Maya Glow grew into a global brand, I could see the difference I had made, not just in my life, but in the lives of countless women who had faced similar challenges. They saw representation for the first time, a celebration of their skin, their beauty, and their worth. That recognition was more powerful than any apology or validation from the people who had tried to tear me down. I realized that my achievements were the real victory, the proof that I could rise above anything. I also noticed how Ryan and his family reacted. They watched from the sidelines, unable to deny what I had accomplished. Their surprise, their awkward attempts to reconnect, and their silent judgment were all reminders that I had outgrown the world they tried to limit me with. It became clear to me that the sweetest revenge isn't in confrontation or in making someone feel small. It's in building a life so full of success, respect, and confidence that the people who doubted you can only watch. Every feature in magazines, every social media post praising Maya Glow, and every international collaboration reinforced the reality that I had transformed pain into power. I didn't need to prove anything to them directly. My life, my empire, and my impact spoke louder than any words could. Their mockery no longer mattered because it had already served its purpose. It had fueled my drive, sharpened my focus, and taught me the value of persistence. Looking back, I felt proud. Not just of the brand, but of the woman I had become. I realized that strength isn't measured by how others treat you, but by how you respond to their cruelty. Every insult had made me stronger, every betrayal had made me wiser, and every doubt had made me relentless. My success was more than a personal triumph, it was proof that determination, vision, and self-belief could turn humiliation into unstoppable power. In the end, I understood that true victory isn't loud. It's quiet, lasting, and undeniable. It's your life, your accomplishments, and the brilliance of your work while the world watches from the sidelines, realizing too late that they underestimated you. Standing on the stage, I looked out at the crowd, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and determination. Years of struggle, humiliation, and relentless effort had led to this moment. I wanted every person in that room to understand the journey it took to reach here, and more importantly, to feel the power within themselves to overcome the challenges in their own lives. I spoke slowly, letting each word carry weight. Never let anyone's ignorance make you doubt your worth, I said, looking directly at the audience. Let your dreams, your strength, and your achievements be the story they never saw coming. These weren't just words, they were a promise I had made to myself long ago, a principle that had guided me through sleepless nights, setbacks, and moments of fear. The reactions were immediate. I saw women nodding, wiping tears from their eyes, and smiling with newfound confidence. Some came forward afterward, sharing their own stories of struggle, judgment, or doubt. They told me how my journey inspired them to believe in themselves, to pursue their dreams despite the voices telling them they weren't good enough. I realized then that Maya Glow was never just about beauty products. It was about empowerment, resilience, and proving that every woman has the right to shine in her own way. I shared my story honestly, including the times I had cried alone, felt betrayed, or doubted my worth. I explained how every insult, every moment of mockery, had become fuel for the fire that drove me. I told them how I had turned pain into ambition, humiliation into motivation, and skepticism into determination. The audience listened intently, and I could see them connecting with my journey, finding hope for their own challenges. By the end of the speech, I felt a deep sense of closure. I didn't need Ryan or his family to apologize, or anyone else to recognize my struggle. The proof was in my life, my work, and the impact I had on others. I realized that winning isn't about proving yourself to the people who doubted you, it's about creating a life where your worth, your achievements, and your confidence speak for themselves. Afterward, hundreds of messages poured in, young women thanking me for sharing my story, promising to embrace their own beauty and strength, and saying they felt inspired to chase their dreams without fear. I understood that the journey I had endured, the obstacles I had overcome, and the pain I had faced were not just my story, they had become a source of hope for thousands of others. My glow had done more than succeed as a brand. It had created a movement, a reminder that determination, self-belief, and courage can turn even the harshest mockery into unstoppable power. I had not just won, I had become unstoppable. And in that realization, I found the ultimate freedom, the freedom to be proud, the freedom to inspire, and the freedom to know that nothing could ever take away what I had built, both for myself and for the women who looked to me as proof that success and self-worth are always within reach.